Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ten Under 10 on the Hoosier Network. My name is Adam Oppenheim. With me again is Graham Nash, bringing you more updates from the Big Ten Conference. Today, we're going to hop back into men's sports, so let's get to it because we have tons to get to. Let's start on the field with football. I'm going to run you through the scores from Saturday, and then Graham is going to break down what these games mean for the conference. Number 3, Penn State ended up losing to Ohio State after being up 10-0 to start. The final was 20-13 to the 4th-ranked Buckeyes. 13th-ranked Indiana whooped Michigan State, scoring 47 unanswered points to stay undefeated. The Minnesota Golden Gophers were able to hang on to beat number 24 Illinois 25-17 in Champaign. As for number 1 Oregon, they continued to cruise as they beat Michigan in the Big House 38-17. As for the unranked matchups, Northwestern beat the struggling Boilermakers 26-20 in overtime. Iowa took care of Wisconsin 42-10 in Iowa City. Nebraska's season has fallen apart as they lost to UCLA 27-20. And lastly, Washington defeated USC 26-21. Graham, the rankings came out for the college football playoff on Tuesday. 4 Big Ten teams in the top 10. What are your takeaways from that and the games on Saturday?
4 Big Ten teams are sitting probably about where you would put them. I mean, there's so many unknowns, and clearly the CFP pollers are favoring the Big Ten and the SEC. We've got 8 teams from those 2 conferences, 4-4. So that means a lot going forward, especially because as the teams play each other, then there's going to be a lot of weight on those. But I think Ohio State is a weird one to place for me. They haven't looked great in their last 2 games.
They have a loss.
That's exactly right. So I don't know exactly what to do with them. I don't know what to do with Penn State. I'm not happy with Penn State right now. I don't know where to put them. But I think that, honestly, they probably did the best that they could with what they have. The only thing I really dislike is not in the Big Ten. It's with Miami at 4. I don't really feel like they
played some close games.
They played some close games, and they've only played, one ranked team in the 25th Louisville Cardinals, I believe it was. So I'm not too happy with them at 4, but I don't know then, what I would rearrange and where the Big Ten teams would move. I just think that there's work to be done, and I'm excited for the next couple weeks to decide where those teams will land.
How about let's break down Penn State a little bit. They lose the game against Ohio State. James Franklin just cannot seem to win against a big team. What have you thought of their ranking and James Franklin?
Yeah, the Nittany Lions are falling back into their usual habits of having a great start and then losing a big game to Ohio State. That's just how their season seems to go. But really upset with the coaching, specifically in the red zone, in the 5-yard line. They had, I think it was 5 snaps within the 5, and they didn't give it to Tyler Warren. Like, you don't give it to your beast of a running back. Like, what are we doing? It reminds me of the Super Bowl when the Seahawks didn't throw it or didn't run it on 4th down. So my issue is really the coaching was not very good against the Ohio State Buckeyes. They really just were trying to get too crafty, didn't stick with what they knew, and then that really caused issues. So I think this next weekend will tell us a lot about their adjustments, about where they want to be and how they can play. But they were just trying to do too much against Ohio State.
And now a team behind them, Indiana, they have a chance to possibly jump them as they play Michigan, which is a team they haven't been favored against in a ton.
Yeah, and they were ranked. Michigan was ranked at one point, so we know that they can play ball. So it'll be interesting. It's down in Bloomington, so the Hoosiers will pack the rock, and it'll be a fun game.
All right, it's time to move on from the field to the pitch and talk about men's soccer. I'll run through the scores from the past week, and Graham, you can let us know how it's going to shake out. Michigan State drew with Ohio State 2-2, and with 1 game left, the Buckeyes went into College Park and won 2-1 over Maryland to share the Big Ten regular season title with IU. Rutgers won 2 games against Maryland 3-1 and defeated Michigan State 1-0. Indiana dominated over Northwestern 6-1 and cruised over D3 Trine 4-1. Northwestern, though, bounced back as they won 4-1 over Penn State. Michigan drew at 1 against Wisconsin. Lastly, Washington blanked number 25 UCLA 1-0. Graham, we are set for the Big Ten tournament. Who has the clearest path?
Got to be the Buckeyes. I mean, they get a bye, so that's helpful. Right. That's always going to be nice if you get a bye week. But along with that, they will play the winner of Washington or Michigan State. 2 middle-of-the-pack teams. We saw Michigan State here recently, and their defense is good. They struggle a little bit on offense. So I think the Buckeyes can have a pretty easy road to the final. And then on the other side of the bracket, Indiana and Maryland, they're not playing each other in the first round, but assuming all goes as it should, they'll play each other in the second. And that is going to be just a dogfight. Those two teams are so good. Maryland's, they tripped up a little bit towards the end of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond and recover. But I think just as it sits right now, Ohio State clearly has the easiest road to the final. Will they win? Who knows? Because they've got to play either Maryland or Indiana. Again, assuming all goes as it should. But I would probably rank it as my most likely path. It would be Ohio State has the clearest. And then at 2, I'd give it to the Indiana Hoosiers just because of how good they are at soccer in October, which now we're in November, so who knows what could happen. But still, that team is so good and they're on such a good run. And then at 3, I'd put the Terps because they've stumbled a little bit towards the end of the season. So
Buckeyes, Hoosiers, Terrapins.
That's right.
Top 3.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the final men's sport that we will tell you about is hockey. It was a mix of non-conference and conference games for the Big Ten this past week. Starting with the conference games, Wisconsin and Notre Dame played 2 games against each other. The Irish took game 1 on Friday, 3-2 in overtime, but the Badgers bounced back 2-1 on Saturday. Minnesota swept the mini-series against Penn State, winning 3-1 and then 1-0. Michigan cruised against Boston University on Friday, 5-1. However, the Terriers made the second game close on Saturday, falling to the Wolverines 5-4 in overtime. Lastly, Ohio State put up 15 goals in 2 games against the Lake Superior Lakers. It was 9-3 on Friday and 6-2 on Saturday. And that will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Special thanks to our producer, Colin Dusek, and teleprompter, Jesse Witt. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at B1G_under10. And check back in for our next episode of Big Ten Under 10.